Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Beijing Center Zoom. This is the second in a series that we're doing here of conversations with Israeli ambassadors, senior diplomats, people who have represented the state of Israel in various countries around the world. Last week, those of you who were with me will have enjoyed the conversation I had with Mark Regev, who was the ambassador to Britain. Today we're going to be speaking soon to the former ambassador to China, Matan Vilnai. Before I get to that, let me just briefly explain how this is going to work for those of you who are new to this. I'm going to speak to the ambassador for about 30 minutes, and then the floor is yours to put your questions to him. Write them in the chat at the bottom of the screen, and I will put those questions to our guest. Okay, so it's a real privilege and an honor for us to have Matan Vilnai with us. As you'll hear, as I read out a short version of his CV, this is someone who has essentially devoted his working life to the state of Israel. He had a long career in both the military and politics before his appointment as ambassador in 2012. He had a distinguished military career, serving in the IDF for 35 years, reaching the rank of Major General. He was a commander of a task force in Sinai during the Yom Kippur War and was deputy commander of the Entebbe rescue mission in 1976. He was elected to the Knesset in 1999 with the Labour Party and began a long political career, which basically continued until his appointment as ambassador. During this period in politics, he was a Minister of Science, Culture and Sport, Minister of Science and Technology, Minister of Homeland Security, and of course a member of Knesset, a very active member of Knesset. He also was awarded a fellowship at Harvard University in 1984 and a fellow of Johns Hopkins University in 1998. He is currently the president of the Chinese University of International Business and Economy in Israel and president of the Israel-Asia Chamber of Commerce. He's also the chairman of the organization Commanders for Israel's Security. Ambassador Matan Vilnai, welcome to the Beijing Center Zoom program.
Paul. In Mandarin, it's thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stick to English, but
we're talking about China, so it must be
fair enough. Well, maybe I'll learn a bit of Mandarin during the program. So to get to the first question, so as my introduction made clear, you're someone who you had this long career in the military and in politics. You were a career soldier. You were a deputy commander in the legendary operation at Entebbe. You'd achieved a huge amount in your life devoted to the state of Israel. And then you get this job appointed to represent Israel in China. My question is really, how did you approach this position? Because we're talking about a country that had just become, I think at that time, had just overtaken Japan as the world's second largest economy. Clearly a hugely important player in the world affairs. But at that time, I think, was not a country that Israel had particularly close ties with. So what was your approach to this position? What did you think? What did you see as your main mission going into this?
First of all, it's wonderful to speak with you. People, I understand that mainly from Israel, but from the US and Europe as well, because the experience in China is really something unique. I am not a career diplomat, as you understand, and they asked me to be the ambassador to China because it's China. And my wife, the first reaction of my wife Why Beijing? Why not Washington? I said to her, Washington, everyone is understand about the US and Israel. Now we have the visit of the president in this, not just now. But China is something that we understand much less. And therefore, when I'll be in China, I will be their number one. And since then, you won't believe me, it's 10 years ago, I read only about China. Books in English and Hebrew, magazines, everything that I can read about China, because China is very unique. I believe that some of you have visited China as tourists, and maybe more than that. And you know that China is not the US, but bigger. It's not Europe, but not the same culture. It's something absolutely different. And serving in China, it's a unique experience, and it's very interesting. And my first question was, what is our strategy, our Israel strategy toward China? And I'll tell you a top secret. No one told me that, but there is no strategy. It depends on the ambassador.
Wow.
And I liked it very much because I understood that this is my job to create the strategy toward China. And it was interesting. And as Paul mentioned, the first visit of our prime minister, it was May 2013. It was Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was the first visit to China, very important one. And the Chinese, they understood the meaning of an Israeli leader in his level coming to China, and they use it very well. And you have to remember that at the same time, they have a visit of President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority.
Wow.
And I was thinking to myself, by accident, they will pass in the same corridor in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or in the Prime Minister or in the President's office. And the Chinese will arrange that they will meet each other. I worked on it very hard that no incident will be between our Prime Minister and the President of the Palestinian Authority. And China is unique. It's not just big, it's something special. It's culture different of us, history is different, everything is different. The way of thinking is not our way. They are very smart. Don't underestimate them. And the US are afraid of them, and they're absolutely right about it, because the Chinese, they can do a lot. They're very disciplined. They're well organized. They understand what is the meaning of long-term planning. They are very dangerous in these aspects, although you have to remember that they never was an empire. There are no Chinese colonies over the oceans, like the American, the Brits, the German, of course, the French, all the superpowers that were before. They are only around China. They are in East Asia, and that's it. Very huge, very large, but they're only there. No colonies of China over the world, not in Africa, not in America, not in Europe, of course, not in other space. And you have to understand their way of thinking. It's different of us, absolutely different. The history is different. You have to learn it from the beginning in order to understand what is the meaning of China. And I'll tell you what is the main object of the Chinese with the relation with Israel. The main object is Chuangxi, which means innovation. They can't understand how a state of 9 millions achieves so much in so short time. You have to understand from the political point of view, they're on the other side. They support the Palestinians, they support the Arab world. They're not with us, but at the same time, they are our friends. it can happen only with China. On one side, they are our friends and they would like to learn a lot from us, and they gave a lot to us. And at the same time, politically, they support the other side. They believe, as I believe personally, in two-state solution. There is no other solution. And they believe in other issues that we believe too, but it's not the real stand of the Israeli state, of the Israeli government. And therefore, it's very interesting to serve them, to try to understand them, to try to understand what is the meaning of being a Chinese, what is the meaning of to be a superpower. And we have to remember that in 1980, 40 years ago, 42 years ago, they were like Spain, like Italy, not more than that. Now, they are second to the US from economic point of view, in their position in the world. They passed the Japanese, the Germans, very strong countries, and they became number 2 in the world. It's in only a matter of time that will be number 1. It depends on them, it depends on other aspects, but at the end, it's only a matter of time that the Chinese will be number 1 in the world, although personally, I'm not sure of it because not like the Americans, I not really understand the meaning of the global world. It's a long way to learn it, to study it, to understand it. But they're on the way. But they're on the way. And to be the ambassador of Israel in China, it was really something unique, a wonderful experience. And to understand why we are friends, it took me time. It's not easy to understand it. But at the end, I realized what is the meaning of China and what is the meaning of Israel and what is our position. You know, China is so huge. I used to say to them, you are like a carrier, an aircraft carrier, a huge ship, and we are a small ship. You know, the relation between Israel and China in the area, it's 600 times Israel can enter China in the area to understand what is the meaning of big China and small Israel.
Yeah. Thank you very much for those opening remarks. There's a lot there that I'd like to follow up on. I also want, again, to encourage the audience to write their questions into the chat. I will get to them, I promise. So you mentioned, there are a couple of things. As you said at the beginning, we currently have the visit of President Biden to Israel. And obviously, the relationship between Israel and the United States is something on a different level to everything else. In terms of the alliance between the two. But one of the issues that seems to have come up in the past is American pressure on Israel regarding China, that America sees China, rightly or wrongly, and we can get into that, but sees China as a competitor and a threat to some extent. It depends on who the president is, I guess. But certainly, as a country that is that it doesn't want its allies like Israel to be strengthening in certain ways. How did you negotiate that as ambassador? Because your job is to strengthen this relationship with China, but you were aware. You served in politics, you served in the military. You're very aware of the importance of the U.S.-Israel relationship. So how did you deal with that?
Oh, this is the main issue. And many people start to ask questions why they're sending a general to be the Israeli ambassador to China because we have no military relation with China, not at all. And the United States, and they are absolutely right about it, are sure that we are not giving nothing to the Chinese in the military field. And it's very important to understand it. I don't see the Chinese as an enemy or a foe, but as a competitor, not more than that. I don't believe that they are going to use military power. It's not their way. But you know nothing. You know, there were people that said that if Putin would succeed in Ukraine, it was a matter of time that China will do the same with Taiwan. Because Taiwan, from their point of view, is one of the Chinese provinces. You know, China is 34 provinces like the United States in America, and one of them is Taiwan. It's a Chinese province from any aspect, historically, everything. And there were rumors about it, but not speculation, but not more than that. The Chinese are competitor to the American, and we have to find the way, because America is a cornerstone in the survival of the state of Israel. We just heard the president in Ben Gurion Airport, and is now in Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. And we know what he's going to say. It's very important for us. And as a military man, I can tell you that the special relation with America, with the US, is a cornerstone in our survival in the Middle East. We are fighting to ourselves. It's okay, but we need the support of America. I used to say to the Chinese leaders, and my people told me, Matan, Ambassador, don't say it. They understand it. They are smart enough to understand the meaning of the special relation between Israel and the United States of America. But at the same time, we have to find a way how we live together with the fact that the United States is cornerstone in our strategy, and at the same time, the Chinese are very important in economy relation, in trade relation, everything like this. And we have to find a way how to work together. I used to say to the leaders, the three superpowers, Washington, Beijing, and Jerusalem, have to find a way how they're living together. And no one smiled. It was obvious that we are talking about the three superpowers. The 9 million Israelis, with the 1.300 million Chinese, and the several hundred millions American. We are superpowers. And we have to find a way how to work together. It's not easy, but if you understand it, you find the way how to do it. And I believe that we found it. We found it how they are dealing with China in economy issues, not more than that, trade issues, academy. I am now president of a branch of a Chinese university, as Paul mentioned before. And this is our relation, but at the same time, defense, security, military, it's not in the agenda. It's absolutely out. And there is a lot to do without it, believe me. It's a lot to do without it. And the Chinese tried all the time to understand how we achieve so much in innovation. You know, the startups in Asia, I don't have to tell you, I believe that you know it, you can't compare it. And I toured all over China. I visited all the provinces in China. When I'm saying a visit, it's meeting with the party secretary. The most important figure everywhere is the party secretary. Then with the university, speaking with the students about China and Israel, and everyone asked me the question, how you innovate in this so much. It's a real question there. It's a real question there. And this is the basic of the special relation between China and the state of Israel.
Okay. So I understand that what you're saying in terms of this is that military issues, security issues are kept off the table. And I understand for obvious reasons. But I wonder is there a risk of it somehow finding its way onto the table because, for example, you said that China has relations with the Arab world and also with Iran. I think it was last year that China did some deal with Iran. I forget the details, but certainly they're a big customer of Iranian oil, right? How does that? Is that something that could create problems?
the Chinese were the backdoor of Iran to the world when Iran suffered from the sanctions. The backdoor of Iran to the world was China. The same now with Putin and Russia. When they have sanctions from the United States and from the European, their backdoor to the world is China. And China is playing a very important role in the Ukraine crisis, although you never heard about it. You heard about Europe, about NATO, about Russia, of course, Belarus, and the Chinese are not there, but they're deep there. And President Putin needs the Chinese urgently because they are the backdoor of Russia to the world. The same was with Iran. And the Chinese, as I mentioned before, they are friends of the Arab world. But at the same time, they are friends. And maybe in the future, they can take the place of the United States of America dealing with the Israelis and the Arabs, because both of us are friends of them. And maybe they can do something about it.
Interesting.
Basically, they are not involved in the Middle East because they're involved, but not so much because they understand the role of the United States of America in the Middle East. And for them, it's obvious that the Americans are number one in the Middle East. And they're not going to take their place, not in the near future, because they understand the meaning of the US, the military power, the economy, everything. They understand it. They are dealing with the American in their place, in the South China Sea, and around the Philippines and Japan and all the ocean, all the Pacific Ocean next on the coast of China, but not in the Middle East, of course. And in Asia, there is some kind of a Cold War, as it was in Europe. Now there is no Cold War in Europe. Germany is united. Berlin, in many aspects, is the capital of Europe. But there, Korea is still divided, and they have still all the elements of Cold War as it used to be in Europe. Now it's happened in East Asia.
Wow. Okay. I wanted to ask you. You were there at the beginning. I think it was in your first year that Xi Jinping became the president of China, the ruler of China. And looking at it from the outside, he seems to be now. He's become this really a kind of colossus on the world stage. Someone who is clearly wants to make a mark as put China at as one of the great powers in the world. Also, it seems like he's also increased a certain level of I don't know, authoritarian rule even more in China, like tightened that. So I'm interested in your experience being there when this new guy came in, who's made such an impression, for better and worse, I guess, but has made such an impression on the world. What was your experience of dealing with him, of seeing what he was doing within China and also China outside?
I met and talked with President Xi Jinping several times. I gave my credential to Hu Jintao. It was before him. Xi Jinping is the sixth generation of presidents. Mao Zedong is number one, of course. And in many aspects, Xi Jinping is like Mao Zedong. And we have to understand, China is a communist, absolutely, 100%. Although when you are in the street of Beijing or Shanghai, you feel like you are in Manhattan. But at the end, it's 100% communism. Everything top down, nothing bottom up. It's communism in every aspect. And Xi Jinping is, first of all, the secretary of the party. I mentioned before, the most important post in China all over, universities, factories, towns, cities. The most important post is the party secretary of this and that. And first of all, he's a party secretary. Then he's the commander of all the military forces. And at the end, he is a president. And we have to understand that these three posts made him very strong in many aspects. He's like the president of the United States of America, although it's not a democracy. No one can understand what is the real process that he became number one and not someone else. And he is, in many aspects, like Mao Zedong. Now he's going to get his third term. It used to be, not according to the law, but it used to be that every president and every administration is for 2 terms, which means 10 years, 2 terms of 5 years. Now, in coming November, they are going to approve his third term. It's first time after Mao Zedong, and it's very important to understand it. And we have to look very carefully what is going on to happen in this third term of Xi Jinping. And he is, with all the authority of a Chinese leader. They know him before, of course. You have to see, he is working, he's the head of the standing committee of the Politburo. There is no election, you understand it, no election at all. It's not a democracy. The Politburo is 25 functionaries. They are leading China. 7 of them are the standing committee that heading by the president, Xi Jinping in this aspect, and then the prime minister, Hu Jintao, Li Keqiang, Hu Jintao is the former president, Li Keqiang, and they are the government. Hu Jintao, Li Keqiang is also the prime minister, but I'm not talking about ministers, I'm talking above the ministers. And then the Politburo, 25 people, the standing committee are living in the same neighborhood in Beijing. If you visit Beijing, there is the old city of the Caesars, of the dynasty. But next to it, there is a park. In the maps, it's a park. Nothing is written, only a park. And this park is a neighborhood. I forgot the name of the neighborhood, in a minute I remember it, that all the standing committee, 7 families are living there, their officers there, they work there, the kids are there, and this neighborhood is the heart of communist China. And from there, they're controlling, they're dominating the huge area of the People's Republic of China. And Xi Jinping, he gave his Chinese dream several months after he became number one. It's in the winter of 2013. He gave his dream of Chinese dream, how China is going to behave. And people realize that he is speaking about the whole world. And he sees China as a superpower, and the main mission of him is to connect China to Europe. And there is a huge project of building the new Silk Road in the oceans and on the continent at the same times.
The Belt and Road, right? Belt and Road.
In order to tighten the relation between Europe and China. It's thousands of miles. It's a huge distances, and they have to find a way how to create a modern transportation between China and Europe and the United States. And this is his vision, and this is an understanding of the world. And at the same time, They are modernizing all the time their military forces, but we have to know that let's speak about the military forces. The United States of America, the budget, it's around 800 billion American dollars. Number two is China with 200, maybe 250 billion dollars. It's a huge difference. And then the Russian and the European, Israel in the 15 place with several dozens of billion American dollars. And this is the gap between the United States and China. And there is a gap. The Chinese are working to close this gap as much as they can. It's not easy, it's not a short time, it's a long time. At the end, they will achieve it, I believe, because if the Chinese decided about something, they will achieve it. You know, there is a parliament. The Israeli parliament meets, the Knesset meets 3 times a week. The Chinese parliament is meeting once a year in March. It's called the Link Way, the two seats of the parliament and another body of the government. And they are the parliament of a communist system. And they are doing their best in order to support the president as much as they can. Not like our parliaments are fighting the president, the opposite. They have to support the ruler, in this kind, the president, as much as they can. And they are doing a wonderful job from their point of view. And Xi Jinping is using it. And Xi Jinping is a very smart leader, a very strong one. If he will win the 3rd term, it will be something unique. It's never happened before. And he shows something about Xi Jinping. And if you are talking about the 3rd term, why not to talk about the 4th term? Although he became older and older, now he's almost 70, 68, 69. So to be 75 and then to be re-elected again, I don't know. But he is now in full support of the whole Chinese system.
Wow.
And
okay.
Something his relation with Israel is very interesting. He understands the meaning of the Arab world, of the Israeli economy, Israeli innovation, and he worked accordingly.
Okay. Thank you very much for those for all of those remarks, and I'm going to move on to some of the questions that we've received from our audience. So there's a question here. There's a couple of questions actually relating to coronavirus, corona. And there's a question. Firstly, there's a question from Shmuel, who wants to know whether the pandemic could actually create opportunities for development in the Israeli-Chinese relationship.
No, it's not an opportunity. I don't believe in it. I understand, as all of you understand, that the corona started there in Wuhan. It's in the middle of China, Wuhan. It's the capital of one of the provinces.
Right.
It's the hottest place in the world, I believe. It's a very hot place. And no, the Chinese are working according to their way to deal with the corona. You can't understand them, but they are doing their way. They are using their virus, and they are using their cure to the corona. And we can't. I don't believe that we have something that can do with them about the corona.
Okay.
This.
Right. I mean, there was another question from Neville. He wanted to know what the actual position in China right now is with Corona. Are they locking down? Do they have? Because I know China had a very severe lockdown initially, right? Initially, China had a crazy level of lockdown, right?
I don't understand the question.
What's the current situation in China regarding Corona? Is there a lockdown?
I'm not there, and I really I know like you from the media, not more
Okay.
than that. And they are dealing in Chinese way with the corona. They decided about nothing. They can't tolerate even one sick from the corona in the whole city, university. You won't believe it, but they are working accordingly. I know only from the media, not more than that. I don't know nothing about the corona in China.
Okay. A question here about Russia. You talked about the relationship a little that China has with Russia. It's a question. Do you think China could actually help convince Putin to withdraw from Ukraine? Could China actually do the job of persuading Putin to withdraw?
It's all the relation between the two communist superpowers. It used to be. The
Right.
USSR and China is very complex. And in some cases, they were on the two sides of the front. And if you remember, they have a fighting in northern China and Siberia along the, what is the name of the river there? The Helokjan River. They fought each other. And there was very problematic situation with them. Although Mao Zedong, the moment that he came to power in the 1st of October 49, his first and maybe his only visit was to Moscow. And he stayed there about half a year. It's a long time. He stayed there, and the relation between the communism, the Russian communism, and the Chinese communism was very complicated. And in some cases, as I mentioned before, they fought each other in the same time.
But today, does he have the sort of relationship?
Today they support the Russian. I can't understand why. I believe that it's a mistake,
right?
But they support them. In February, at the end of February, Putin started the war in Ukraine. In the middle of February, he visited the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, and they gave declaration of friendship and everything. I'm not sure if the Chinese knew that he was going to invade. It's against their understanding of the world, because they really believe that no superpower allow to be involved in other state problems or issues. And they really believe in it. And Putin is behaving absolutely different from this understanding that no state can use military force in order to be part of other states. And this is their understanding of the world. And Putin is not work accordingly, of course. And for them, it's a problem. But at the end, they support them. And I believe that when President Xi Jinping is going to sleep every night, he's saying to himself, I'm not going like Brezhnev on this other that were not strong enough. I am tough, and no one will change the regime in China. Not like it's happened in the USSR.
Right. I remember reading about how China looked at the Soviet Union, at what happened, and said we're not going to make the mistakes of Glasnost and Perestroika. Right. We're not going to do what Gorbachev did, and open up in that way. Okay. Here's an interesting question. So many people will be aware of the Chinese investment in the port in Haifa, the Haifa Bay terminal port. There's a question here: Does the Chinese state participation in the ports make you concerned in terms of Israeli security and information gathering, this kind of thing?
No, I'm not concerned about it. We understand the rule of the games very well, but if there are some audience from the US, check what is going on in Norfolk, Virginia, or in San Diego, California, and tell me how many Chinese are there. And then we can discuss it. Because the Chinese are in every large port in the world, every one of them, each one of them, including in the US, in the United States of America, in the military bases of the United States of America.
Interesting. Okay. Michelle, the same person who just asked that, she said that she understands that Israel has set up an office to review tech transfers to China. And she wonders if companies in Israel are actually complying with these kinds of procedures.
The company asked what to do in China?
That she believes that there is an Israeli office that has to review the transfer of technology from Israel to China. And she wants to know if Israeli companies are actually complying with it. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they, cutting corners?
You must be very. I was a minister, and I sat in a committee of ministers that used to deal with this, not with China, with all over the world. It's very important to do it, and to be sure that we are not acting against our own interest, and it could happen. And we must be very careful about it. And in this aspect, China is a threat. Therefore, we have to be very careful about it, as all the states in the world. It's not easy. It's not only Israel, it's all over. It's in Europe, in the United States, everywhere. And we have to be very careful about it.
Okay. It's also related to security. A question here from Jacqueline. Are the Chinese, or I guess, might the Chinese be able to use Israeli technology to close the gap between them and the United States militarily?
Our mission is not to have mistakes in this. And we have to do our utmost that no technology that is not a military technology, at the end, we support a military technology and will give some upper hand to the Chinese. And I believe that we are very careful about it. I must admit that the Americans are doing a very good job about it. And whenever they have some suspicions, they ask questions. And we have to be sure that we are not doing nothing against the basic interest of the United States of America. That is our real friend. And it's, as I said before, a cornerstone in our strategy in the survival of Israel.
Okay. So this is a question about, well, it's really a question for you about what you're doing now. The University of International Business and Economy in Israel, this is you serve as the president of this university in Israel. Can you tell us a bit about this institution? Is it something which exists in lots of different countries? And this is just the SNIF, the branch that's in Israel?
It's a branch of the UIB. It's a very important university in China. And it's a branch of this. And now we are dealing with business. And we are going, I hope, in medicine and in other fields. It's a matter of time that we will achieve it. You have to remember that around third of the foreign students in the United States of America are Chinese.
Wow.
And they're turning back to China. Maybe some of them stay, but basically they're turning back to China. And there are a huge number of Chinese students, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands, that are studying abroad, basically in the US, and turning back to China, in Europe and Australia as well.
Hmm. That's incredible. Here's a question. What suggestions do you have for Israeli companies that want to develop business with China? Do you have like do's and don'ts, things that they should do and things that they shouldn't do?
First of all, you need deep pocket and a huge amount of patience. You know, when I was the ambassador, El Al flight used to land in Beijing every Sunday afternoon. And Sunday evening, I used to sit with the Israelis, with business people that came from Israel, and to discuss with them China and to give them a briefing what I can do in 2 hours, something like this. Thursday, they were on the way back. El Al flight from Beijing back to Israel. Thursday, 11 o'clock, something like this. And before, I used to sit with them, and you know, they understand everything. They conquered China. There is nothing to add. It's absolutely, they did whatever they would like to do. And I used to say to myself, they are nice people. I'm not going to see them again. With China, they finished. Maybe they will start in other places, but not in China. Because you need to understand them. They are very polite. They are nice people. They smile all the time. You have red carpet everywhere. But it's not a business.
Mm.
You need a long time. And at the end, you need a Chinese that will work with you. This is the best way to do it. And at the end, you can get there a lot. But you need patience and the understanding that you understand nothing. And I used to say about myself, every visit in China, because of the corona, last time it was 3 years ago, but every visit in China, I used to say to myself, I understand less. And the visit after that, I understand less that I believe that I understand. It's not easy. We have to understand that we don't understand.
So here's a question. You mentioned the big plan of Xi Jinping of the Belt and Road Initiative. Is that something that that will somehow involve Israel? Will Israel be included in this in a certain way?
We are not part of it.
Okay.
It's on the northern side. It's not Israel. It's on the north. And at the beginning, I was thinking to myself that maybe we can be part of it. But at the end, we are not there. The countries that the old Silk Road is going through are Central Asia, and then is Kazakhstan, and Russia, of course, and Europe. But we are not part of it. Maybe it's good not to be part of it. I'm not sure about it, but maybe it's better not to be part of this project.
Okay, fair enough. So here's a good follow-up question to your response about the ports. Could you clarify why Chinese presence in port cities in the United States is important for China?
It's important for China?
Yeah, why is that? Why is it important? Why is it important for China to be in, I think you said in San Diego?
The global trade is very important for China. They are bringing all their energy from outside world, basically from Saudi Arabia, and then in Nigeria and other places. And they need the international trade very much, the global trade very much. And therefore, in all the important ports all over the world, you can find the Chinese. Haifa, it's not a port. It's really, from their point of view, it's really nothing. It's really a very, very tiny port. And you know what Haifa, it's nothing. It's really not. In Israel, it's very important, but not from the Chinese point of view. But every relation with Israelis, I had to mention it before, it's important for China. You know, the deal of Tnuva, of the cottage, I ask myself, why they are doing this? Why is it important for them? And
this is China. This is Chinese company buying up Tnuva, a huge Israeli dairy company, right? Yeah.
I realized that for them, dealing with Israelis is very important to be on their portfolio. I am dealing with Israelis. Wow. And in China, at the end, there is some kind of admiration to Israel that I can't understand. And as the ambassador, I used to sit to listen to this, what they spoke about Israel, to very important speakers, dealing with the Israelis, believing that Israel is the center of the world in every aspect. And all the Israelis are very smart people. You know, the top secret in the embassy was very simple. Not to tell that at the end they will realize that not all the Israelis are so smart. It was a top secret in the embassy, not to tell them the truth. That there are some Israelis that are not really smart, and you know them. And they are sure that all of us are in the level of Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein for them is an enigma. And all the Nobel Prizes that are getting that Israel are getting is for them, they can't understand it. Although in the last several years, a lady professor from Shinhua got a Nobel Prize too. And for them, it was really important. And the secret was that not all the Israelis are smart. It's really a secret. Believe me, it's a secret. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So here's a question from Karen. So you already mentioned Taiwan, but Karen's asking, what do you think are China's plans ultimately for Taiwan? And she also asks, does China observe international law?
I'll give the Chinese point of view because I'm Chinese for this. Taiwan used to be a Chinese province. One of the 34 Chinese provinces, one of them is Taiwan. And when the Civil War ended in October 49, the Chiang Kai-shek and his army fled to Taiwan. It's an island, and it's a military problem to conquer it, and they decided to be there. And they defended themselves there, and the Red Army, the Communist Army, was not strong enough to invade Taiwan. So from every aspect, Taiwan is part of China. And the American, when President Nixon came to China first time in 1972, after Kissinger arranged it, the first problem was one China, because there used to be two China, Taiwan and mainland. Now it's one China, and Taiwan is part of China. And whenever there is some tension around it, you see in the TV, it's not connected, but you see in the TV, first of all, the military capability of the PLA, the People Liberation Army, to launch an amphibious operation. And you see it in the TV. And they talk about their missiles, land-to-land missiles from Fujian, in the province that's facing Taiwan, to Taiwan. And you know what? When President Nixon came to China in the winter of 72, he met the president, Mao Zedong. And they met in their parliament. The parliament is called the Great Hall of the People. It's a huge building on Tiananmen Square in the middle of Beijing, and every province has its own officers there. He met Nixon in the offices of Fujian. Fujian is the province that's facing Taiwan, and if will be a military operation, it will go out from Fujian. I don't believe it, but this is the understanding. And the problem is that President Xi Jinping, Secretary of the party, Xi Jinping, said that in several years they are going to solve Taiwan, not by using military force. And it's a problem. It could be a crisis. It could be a crisis, and there are several theories and several books about Taiwan, about the South China Sea that is south to Taiwan, and it's a very problematic area too. And the Chinese and the American daily are confronting each other there. As I mentioned, a Cold War, all the rules of the Cold War are there. And this is a dangerous, maybe the dangerous spot in the world, if will be something of some kind of a third world war. I hope that nothing will be like this, but we have to know. And Taiwan is a real problem. And it's all the time, it's a headline, it's Taiwan as part of China. From their point of view, as part of China.
Right. Right. And I remember one of the arguments made for a strong American response to Russia was that if they didn't do that, it could encourage China or give them the idea that America was no longer interested in defending its allies, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. I think we will finish here, and I will firstly thank very much Ambassador Matan Vilnai for his time, for giving us an hour of his evening to share his experiences and his insights with us. As I said at the beginning, for those of you who missed it, and I explained Ambassador Vilnai's long career in Israeli public life, in the military and politics. It's truly an honor to speak to you, sir. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for joining us. For those of you who are not on my mailing list, you can email me, paulg@begincenter.org.il, and get on the mailing list and find out about the other events that we're doing. Next week, I'll be speaking to Michael Oren, former ambassador to the United States. So you can join us same time next Wednesday for that. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or a great afternoon, depending where you are. And I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Share. Thank you.